To our PARC Workshop for the year. We're delighted that you would join us. And our goal tonight is to introduce some of the concepts of the PARC grant application process to people who have not participated in this process, and perhaps give, here's Brian right now. Brian, you're just in time to introduce our presentation tonight. I'm going to let you go ahead and do that, and then I'll chime in for the slide presentation.
First of all, I have to offer my, let me get to a video. First of all, I need to offer an apology. I was playing with my grandson and looked up at the clock and it was 7:01, so I had to scramble in here, so I apologize, but you know how grandkids are. They somehow take precedence over everything else, so I'm sorry. Okay, thank you and welcome. This is an unusual format for our annual PARC workshop / seminar, but we've learned how to adapt during 2020 and 2021, so this is going to be interesting stuff to do. We appreciate doing this to tackle this new way of presenting the information in previous years. Let me introduce to you my committee. We have a great group of citizens that are involved with this effort, and they put in a lot of time, especially during the spring when we really start to review the applications and make our recommendations to the council. They're very, very involved. You'll meet him later on as he does a presentation. We have Laurel Shelley, we have Nan Kuhn, we have Karen Shack, we have Scott Oakleberry, who has to be excused, and I think Nan has to be excused as well. I think she had some health concerns. We have, let's see, who else do we have missing? Let's see, I think I've mentioned our new addition, and let's see, is it Brandon Smith?
That's correct. Yep.
Brandon's at the top, front and center on my screen. So Brandon, welcome. He's a new member of our PARC board, and I think I've covered about everybody else. And then we also have Cheryl Enigner. She helps us with the legal side of things on the city. And Camden is he's our go-to guy. If we need anything done with the city, he helps us negotiate that. He's our liaison. And then Clark Taylor is our city council representative who serves in our committee. But we're so I'm grateful for them and for their dedication to this, and grateful for all of you for attending this PARC workshop. And so without further ado, Nate, take it over and let's get to it.
Nate, you're muted. It helps to unmute. Sorry about that. So just a few housekeeping items to start with. If you'd like to turn on your video so I can see you, that'd be great. If not, it's okay. If you could turn on your mute so we don't get a lot of background noise, that'd be fantastic also. We're gonna have some questions at the end of the presentation, a little Q&A session. So write your questions down and we'll get to them at the end. So welcome everybody. We thank you for coming. Camden has agreed to do the slides tonight, so I don't have to try to do two things at once. So here's our agenda, guys. We're gonna go through a brief introduction to what the PARC is, what the PARC program is for American Fork. We'll let you understand why this is important. A clarification for some and new information for others on what these funds can be used for and what makes your organization eligible, and the process for this year of 2021. And last, we're going to wind up with what's next if you are your application is selected by the City Council. So without further ado, let's break into the slides. Brian already gave an introduction of our group, and it's fun to work with these people, I'm telling you. Thank you for your applications. We've requested you be here so that you get a chance to see how we do things and hopefully increases the quality of the applications that come in. Hold your questions till the end and we'll get to them, I promise. Okay, just a quick summary of the projects from last year. We had some fantastic applications again. We've seen an increase in quality of the applicants and the applications as the years have gone on with this phenomenal project. So a few of the projects from last year, we gave a total grant amount of $920,200 roughly dollars. Harrington had 3 projects: the library and Rotary Club, their book fairy and dictionaries, and of course our flagship project that's been going on for a few years as we completed the Art Dye Park, a project close to my heart, and I'm so delighted it turned out as well as it did. I could tell some stories about Brandon and I a very late night in the summer of 1989 at Art Dye Park, but we won't get into that. The Daughters of Utah Pioneers, their 60-year celebration, Timpanogos Arts Foundation for Programming Administration, the ACT for 2 of their plays. I don't know how that reservation word got on there, I'm sorry. The New Friends Quilting Circle had some awesome projects and some equipment, and the AF Library for children room expansion. Timpanogos Symphony, the Greenwood Concert, Quail Cove Amphitheater, a restroom project there, long overdue. The Wasatch Dance Company, and Parks and Recreation for scoreboards at the baseball park. Here's some of the pictures. We're going to scroll through them quickly. There's the restroom at Quail Cove. What an awesome picture of Art Dye. What a great project it is. Here's some pictures from the Harrington projects that were this summer. Fantastic. A couple of them there. The Wasatch Contemporary Dance. And for the New Friends Quilting Circle, some of their projects. Awesome projects for the community. Okay, I'm going to put in a shameless plug right now before we go on, and that is, please plan on taking photographs and documenting your project. These photographs not only document what happened and memorialize them, but it also helps us to basically advertise the quality of the projects that are being done here. So I'll get to this again, but I'm going to start with that right now. So to understand this application process, we need to know what the park tax is. It exists to provide additional funding to our city in the terms of cultural facilities and organizations, recreational facilities and parks. It is collected from state sales tax revenue and then distributed back to the city of American Fork. And that is what funds our projects. They get distributed each year as indicated by the city council timeline, except for 1.5%, which may be used for administrative costs or things like surveys or other things. And the park funds, as we've said in the past, are not an entitlement. Completing an application doesn't guarantee that you're going to get the funds. And the city council makes the final determination of what gets awarded. Our group only receives the applications and makes recommendations to the council. If you are a previous recipient of the funds, it's no guarantee that you're going to get future funds unless it's been stipulated in your original request. So just a few reminders there. Okay, what can these funds be used for? As stated in the original goal, it is for improvement and enhancement of cultural facilities, cultural organizations, and recreational facilities for the city. For very straightforward. These are some clarifications, and we've had to define these very closely over time, but in the cultural facilities, they can be provided to a publicly owned and operated facility. We can't provide funds, cultural facility funds, to a private facility, and you see a few of them there. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, here's a very important part. If your grant application is tied to a cultural facility, the applicants must provide for perpetual maintenance and be responsible for operational and financial accountability. So please take that into consideration. And the funds may not be used to fund publicly operated cultural programs. Okay, if your application is tied to a cultural organization, they can be provided if it's a private nonprofit organization having its primary purpose with the advancement of or preservation of natural history, art, music, theater, dance, cultural, including literature, motion picture, storytelling. These are phenomenal projects, and there are things out there that are still haven't been touched. So we recommend consideration for those projects. Okay, recreational facilities. If your grant is tied to a recreational facility, it must be publicly owned and operated. Again, it cannot be private. And these are the uses here, of which there are many in our fair city. So take a look at those. Again, the applicants for recreational facilities must take into account and provide for perpetual maintenance and operational and financial accountability for all the facilities for the funding. So please remember that. If your application is tied to these facilities, it cannot be used to fund publicly owned or operated recreational programs. And they may be used to finance ongoing operating expenses. So that has been defined in our bylaws. Okay. Is your group eligible to apply? Well, it's got to meet the definition if it's a cultural facility. If it's a cultural organization, it must be a 501c3 nonprofit entity or registered with the state of Utah as a nonprofit corporation. Now, here's the important part. It must have an active status at the time of the application deadline. So please go home tonight and check your paperwork and make sure that your entity has an active status during the application process. Okay, that will save you heartache and grief if you get to that point and your application has, or your active status has passed. Okay, if you have a recreational facility and your group is in that avenue, you must meet the definition that we've just stated here. Okay, this is one of my favorite parts of this, is because we've learned some valuable lessons over the last, this is our 6th presentation, believe it or not. So over the last few years, we've learned a lot of good stuff. Okay, so as it states on the slide here, there's a difference in understanding operational costs versus facility costs. Cultural facilities can't ask for operational expenses. Cultural organizations cannot ask for capital expenses. And cultural organization request has to be tied to a clear operating budget. Okay? And it cannot include setup costs. So please take note of that. And only the public facilities can receive facility funding. There's some awesome ideas out there, but it has to meet the definition, okay? Our committee looks very highly upon the impact to the community. So that means that if you have a cultural or recreational facility or activity, that means they're fundamentally located in American Fork. The cultural organizations have to have a significant impact in our community. Now, this is not specifically defined, but is generally interpreted this way by our committee to clarify the mission. If it's an organization that has performances, those performances need to be in American Fork or have American Fork as a target audience. Again, there's great projects out there, but this is for our city and the improvement of these aspects of our community. Okay, here's a new aspect that's brought about by the circumstance we find ourselves in with COVID. That is carry forward funds. Some of the projects have not been able to have been executed this year because of COVID. And if that's the case, the council will be the one approving all carry forward requests. And requests will be considered for 1 year only, and it must have council approval for a 2nd year of carry forward funds. Any request beyond 2 years for carrying forward funds will not be considered. We had a pretty long conversation about this, and we decided this is the way to keep it clean and neat moving forward. If your group is requesting funding to carry forward, we expect on your application to have a very clear explanation of what that means. So please take that into account. Otherwise, we're going to lose track of what we have here. Okay. Camden has done a phenomenal job of putting everything together on the website. The website is your key to happiness in filling out your application. It is very straightforward. It is very streamlined, and in my mind, very intuitive. So please, after you've checked your group's current status, cruise on over to the website and start to get in there and look at it, okay? We will ask you for only one set of organizational data for your group. However, each project will require a separate application. For example, let's take Derek Reichert or Camden or Jason or someone from the city who is filling out some grant applications. And let's take parks, for example. Let's say there's 5 park projects. Well, that person is only going to have one set of organizational data and 5 park applications, because we don't need to see the same data 5 times. We just need the applications for each project to be very clear. The application is done 100% online. So prepare your application on a separate document and copy and paste it into the application. Those have to be done in PDF form only. And this one right here, I promised Nan that I would put it in the slideshow. No formatting will be done by the committee. If it cannot be legibly read, or if it's jumbled up, or it doesn't make sense, or we can't print it out, then your application will go in the round file. We will not be formatting for anyone, so it behooves you to make sure it is done correctly. And again, last point here, your application must be very clear in communicating the goal of your project and how you're going to measure the success of your goal. We look at this very intently, and it's our way of seeing how you're doing on your projects. What is your goal, and how are you meeting your goal? So please make that a core part of your application. Okay, here's the process for this year. It looks a lot like last year. You're doing step number 1 tonight. You're attending the workshop. You're going to go home and you're going to start working on your application tonight, and you're going to make your application online. All of those applications will be reviewed by the legal counsel, which is Sherilyn, and our board. I promise you, we look at every aspect of every project, and we debate and discuss every point. So if you think that it's a waste of time, you're wrong, because we look at all the details. We will ask for presentations from qualified candidates, which goes a long way in helping us decide which projects to recommend to City Council, who has the ultimate say in who is selected to receive a grant. Once the council has made their decision, the recipients then will sign a contract with the city, and the funds will be distributed accordingly. Okay, so here's an overview of the schedule of how things are going to happen. Previously, we had a little more time, but the council has asked us to adapt to a tighter schedule. This means that when we get to the to the presentation process, it'll be very busy, and you'll be asked to provide information in your presentations if you're a qualified applicant, and we want to hear from you. So we have a lot of work to do, and you can see right here, we have to make recommendations to the council on the 8th of April. So we've got a tremendous amount of work to do between now and then. But we welcome it because we have awesome applications and some pretty fantastic projects. So the next slide, Camden, shows the schedule just a little tighter. The applications will open tomorrow. So Camden will flip the switch and it'll be ready to go. The applications will close on February 26th. I did not define a time here, but we typically would close it at midnight on the day of. Is that correct, Camden?
I think I have listed 5 p.m. It says it on the website.
Okay, I apologize. I did not confirm that with you. So whatever time it says that Camden put on there, that's the time. And I might have done a misstep here. I have April 20th on this slide that we have to present recommendations to council. So it's going to be between the 9th and the 20th, somewhere in there. In the month of May, the council will award the PARC grants, and the first week of July is our target to distribute the agreements and the funding. Now, here is an important part. You will be required by contract with the city to keep track of your project. You will be giving a mid-year audit report or presentation to the council, and a year-end audit and or presentation to the council. So it is in your best interest to keep track of what you're doing. Make sure you're measuring yourself against your goals, taking pictures the entire time, and providing them in your reports. It goes a long way for us when we see applicants who are diligent in their record keeping. It shows a level of seriousness, and we like that. And we look forward to seeing repeat applicants from those types of groups. Okay. When you enter, so let's say you've got the grant. Okay, your group was successful. The city council liked what your ideas. Now what do you do? As I said, you'll enter into a contractual agreement with the city. Inside that, you will have a planned use of funds schedule, a schedule of values, I like to call it, wherein it will detail the draws and when you will need the funds. You'll have a start and end date, and you'll show your capability to verify the use of funds. Very important. Here's my next shameless plug for photos. Take them all the time. It's a wonderful thing when we get lots of photos that show progress, and then to see a final project come together. The contract will also have requirements for acknowledgement. For example, let's say there's a presentation and there's a printed program. That printed program must have the PARC logo on it. If you have a construction project, you're going to have a construction sign. If you're doing updates to an existing facility or whatever, it's got to have the PARC logo on it. If you have questions on that, feel free to contact any member of the committee or the city, especially during the time of your contract. This is how people see what we're doing. If they get used to seeing the PARC logo with fantastic projects, then they know what we're about. So it's a simple requirement that we'd like to see followed through on. Okay, next slide, Camden. I want to take a minute to thank Camden. He is fantastic. He is our liaison with the city, puts in a lot of time on our behalf and does a great job. So thank you, Camden. Sherilyn, as was said earlier, she's our legal representative, and Clark is our city council representative. So special thanks to those people as well as Mayor Frost. And that is our program in a nutshell. So for anyone who wrote down any questions, now's the time to ask them.
John Miller here. Can I ask a couple?
Please.
Okay. You said define capital expense. Is that like instruments or things like that, or what exactly is capital expense and expenditures?
For which organization, John?
This will be the new one, Wasatch Winds, Wasatch Show Band.
We
Someplace
view instruments we have funded in the past because we view them as a critical part of your program for that type of thing. So you
earlier
can
in your presentation, you had a thing that said you do not fund capital expenses, and I was just wondering what that was.
John, that's more, we're thinking about facilities, a building or improvements to a building. So mainly physical facilities. I think we've covered that, the instruments and other in the programming.
Okay, that's what I was thinking it was. Second question, the performances in American Fork, if a group does have once in a while a performance outside, that's okay, but they're not necessarily using park funds. But is that still okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's all my questions. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, Mr. Miller, I was the below average clarinet player my sophomore year that broke my arm, and you let me file music in the music room. So thank you for your kindness for a below average clarinet player.
You know, I thought that was you. My music library is still all messed up. Thank you very much. No, I'm just.
Hey, it wasn't messed up when I was there. That's for sure.
No, it was good. Thank you.
But to let you know that Nate has since become above average during that time, so he's now improved.
He had to dust off his clarinet and come and play with the Wasatch Winds is what needs to happen.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I have one question on that. You mentioned that I think on recreation activities, the funds could use be operational. We've tried to really stay away from that just because of it so that way it doesn't get in a habit or ask for that on an ongoing basis. You're probably wanting recreation to stick more to as far as guidance for capital improvement type of value added assets in the community, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? If you think of any after this, after our get together tonight, please don't hesitate to, you can email Camden. You can email anyone on the board, and we'll get you an answer as fast as we can.
Thank you guys for doing this. This is a great program.
You're welcome.
Can I ask one more clarification question?
Absolutely.
We need to be a nonprofit, but not necessarily at this point a 501c3 to apply for park tax funds. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
You have to either be a 501c3 or registered with the state of Utah.
Right, as a corporation. Okay. And that's a lot easier and quicker to do than a 501c3. So that's probably what we're going to do to start with.
And if you have any questions, you can sure ask anybody and we can get a clarification for you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Brian, if there's no other questions, I'll turn the time back to you.
Nate, thank you. Wonderful job as always. And I know that historically, some of you may have had questions and you would take one of us aside alone and ask us that. It may be more difficult to ask in public this way, but to Nate's point, if you have a question after this meeting or have one now and don't want to air that publicly, fire off an email and we'd be glad to chat with you one-on-one to answer your question. But the advisory board is always available. We will help you negotiate this process, especially for those of you that may be new to this, but many of you I see are familiar faces, and this is something you've done many times. And we're grateful for how you've enhanced our community. And we thank you for your patience during this application process. It's been wonderful to see all the park related improvements throughout the years in programming and facilities and you'll start noticing the park logo, because in a few years we have to put that up to another vote to see if they want to renew this tax to make these improvements. And I would be saddened if that didn't happen. So we hope that you will be our cheerleaders and champions for PARC. Whenever you see a facility or program, call it out and point out to your friends and family, let them know that it's a worthwhile use of our funds. So thank you so much for attending this evening, and we'll let you enjoy your grandkids, because I will. Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks, Nate. That was awesome.
Good job, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.